Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today get ready to dive into some really wild stuff. Government projects, weather modification, lithium mines. Yeah, our listeners have uncovered some seriously intriguing leads this week, and we're here to make sense of it all, so buckle up because things are about to get weird. Have you ever wondered if humans could actually control the weather?
It's a question that's captivated people for centuries. And in the 20th century, it moved from the realm of science fiction into something much more, well,
A little too real.
in 1947, Project Cirrus was launched as one of the first major attempts to, believe it or not, manipulate a hurricane.
I mean, I've heard of cloud seeding, but a hurricane, that's a whole other level.
It was ambitious, to say the least. They tried to weaken the hurricane using 180 pounds of dry ice.
180 pounds?
Yeah.
Seriously, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, as you can probably guess, it didn't exactly go according to plan. Instead of weakening, the hurricane actually changed direction and slammed into Savannah, Georgia, causing a lot of damage.
What happened after that? You'd think they would have learned their lesson.
You'd think so, right? But the idea of controlling hurricanes was just too tempting to give up on. Fast forward to 1965, and we have Project Storm Fury picking up where Project Cirrus left off. This time, Hurricane Betsy was in their sights.
Did they manage to control it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They tried their seeding techniques, and right after that, the hurricane changed course and ended up hitting southern Florida.
Oh boy. I bet the public was outraged.
Absolutely. There were congressional hearings, investigations, you name it. People were demanding answers.
So did the government admit they messed up again?
They maintained that the hurricane's shift had happened before the seeding, that it was just a coincidence. But the timing was, shall we say, a little suspect.
I can see how that would raise some eyebrows.
To say the least. And it really highlights the immense complexities, both ethical and scientific, of trying to control something as powerful and unpredictable as a hurricane.
It's kind of like playing God with the weather, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as we all know, those experiments rarely end well.
Exactly. Precisely. And with the ethical concerns and the lack of transparency has only fueled distrust.
It's a perfect storm, so to speak, for suspicion and speculation.
Yeah.
So from hurricanes to, wait for it, earthquakes.
But the idea that someone, somewhere, might be able to control those tectonic plates is enough to send shivers down your spine.
Absolutely. So where does this earthquake idea even come from?
Well, buckle up, because this one gets interesting. In 1997, the U.S. Defense Secretary at the time, William Cohen, he drops this bombshell in a speech.
What did you say?
He basically admits that, yeah, there are countries, groups out there working on tech that could cause earthquakes and even volcanic eruptions. Can you believe that?
Hold on. He said that publicly. That's insane. What was the reaction? People must have freaked out.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to think about the timing of this. We're talking just a few years after the Cold War ends, right? People still have this fear, this anxiety about weapons of mass destruction.
Makes sense.
Whether he intended to or not, he basically confirmed people's worst nightmares, that someone, somewhere, could weaponize nature itself.
So then you fast forward a few years, and you have Hurricane Sandy in 2012. I know our listeners have a lot of thoughts about this one. You have this hurricane barreling up the coast, and then suddenly, bam, it intensifies and makes this sharp turn right towards New Jersey. It's like someone steered it right into the coast.
And of course, the internet being the internet, people start digging around for explanations. That's when things get really interesting, with talk of microwave imagery and, get this, beams of energy.
Okay, I've seen those images floating around online. There's like this beam pointing right at the storm. It's pretty eerie, not gonna lie.
Here's the thing. There are also reports of the National Weather Service, the people who actually study this stuff, being told not to talk about certain aspects of Hurricane Sandy.
A gag order. Seriously. Now that's suspicious.
It definitely adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it?
Okay.
I mean, if there's nothing to hide, why the silence?
Exactly. And that brings us to another topic you've been digging into, lithium mining. So we've got hurricanes, earthquakes, and now we're adding lithium mining to the mix. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But like any good deep dive, it's all about following those threads, no matter where they lead.
And in this case, they lead to a pretty valuable resource, right? I mean, lithium's everywhere these days. It's powering our phones, our laptops, our electric cars.
It's the fuel of the future, some would argue. And that's exactly why it's become such a hot commodity. Countries all over the world, including the US, they're scrambling to secure their own supplies.
Makes sense. Nobody wants to be dependent on another country for something this important.
Exactly. And that brings us to Kings Mountain, North Carolina. You know, that area with those massive lithium deposits.
Right. Huge deposits. Enough to make a big difference for U.S. lithium production. And that's where the Defense Department comes in, right? They've poured a lot of money into getting those mines up and running.
They have. $90 million to be exact, with plans to start mining operations by 2025. On the surface, it seems like a no-brainer. Secure a domestic source of a vital resource. Boost the economy, what's not to like?
Except then you have those floods, those devastating floods in that same region. And suddenly, people are starting to wonder if it's all connected.
Because let's be honest, the tying is a little, well, let's just say it's a little suspicious.
Suspicious is one word for it. I mean, you have residents in towns like Schererville, North Carolina. They're seeing their homes, their livelihoods being washed away by these biblical floods, as they're being called.
And it's hard not to empathize with them, you know? They're seeing these disasters unfold right alongside this big push for lithium mining, and they're starting to connect the dots.
It's like, what if these aren't just natural disasters? What if someone or something is making them worse?
And that's where things get really interesting, because you have this palpable sense of fear among some residents. Remember those reports about people being too afraid to speak out publicly? That silent majority.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. It's like they suspect something's wrong, but they're too afraid to say anything.
It's like they're caught in this impossible situation, right? On the one hand, they're worried about the environmental impact of these floods, about the potential for even worse disasters in the future. On the other hand, they're worried about what might happen if they speak out, if they question the powers that be.
It's a tough spot to be in. So where do we even go from here? How do we balance the need for resources like lithium with the very real concerns of the people who live in these communities?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I think it starts with listening to those voices, those silent majorities, and taking their concerns seriously.
It's about having those tough conversations, even when they're uncomfortable, even when they challenge our assumptions.
Absolutely. And maybe, just maybe, through those conversations, through that willingness to listen and learn, we can find a way forward that benefits everyone, a way to harness the resources we need while also protecting our planet and respecting the voices of those most impacted by our choices.
Well said. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But you've definitely given us a lot to think about today.
Glad to hear it. That's what the deep dive is all about.
Exactly. It's about asking those tough questions, exploring the unknown, and always staying curious. So to our listeners out there, keep digging, keep questioning, and as always, thanks for taking the deep dive with us. See you next time.